It's a good man.
And then half the room's like, who is that?
It's a good man.
All right, let's kick this off. All right, so I'm not sure if I met half of the people here, but nice to meet everyone. Mustafa Hanafi, program manager with Conabos. I've been in the Sitecore space for a few years, but I've decided to jump on and help with the community work that's happening. So working with Dennis, Ben, Nabil, and Sana on the organizing committee of the Toronto SUG, and I'll be your host today. So today we'll do things a little bit differently. We're going to start with a presentation in about 5 minutes. We'll just do quick community updates, quick chats, and give time for more people to join. And then after the presentation, which should take about 45 minutes by Rick and Rich, we will do the regular Sitecore stand-up, and of course Q&A first, and then regular Sitecore stand-up. So yeah, just if anyone has any major community updates that you want to share before we get started, and until more people join, maybe another SUG that's coming up that you want people to know about, or a major announcement to get us started.
Just a call out for the people who are not familiar with the VR stuff. That one person that you can see on my screen that's in the stands, that's Dennis.
Of course it is.
Of
That
course it
Dennis is everywhere.
And I'll get my stuff in there. I'll get in there now too. And get out of camera.
From a community, the next SMAC webinar.
Yeah. Oh, there I am.
Next Monday. And
Okay.
There's 3 people speaking. I am one of them talking about Content Hub. I know, big surprise there, but
Awesome. That's good to know. Thank you, Rick. Anything else happening soon?
Call for papers. Deadline's coming up. Got to do that. We're still open to hearing from more people for the Toronto SUG. I think we got September to still work on. I think it's that one, and then we're going to do a pre-symposium one.
We got SUG Baltics is having their meetup tomorrow at 6 to 8 a.m. Pacific time, so I will probably not be there. And then Sitecore lunch on Friday.
Nice.
Okay, awesome.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
If you guys want to put links on the chat, please, it would be great for people to sign up. All right, so a few more seconds and then we'll be 5:35. I'm in mountain time, so I'm 2 hours behind you, but I just speak Eastern. A few more seconds to start.
More life.
Yeah, more people joining.
Oh, hey, Rich. The person throwing tomatoes is Rich.
Oh, nice. 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 I didn't know Rich was going to do that. That's sweet.
Hi, Hetal. Good to see you here.
Hello. I got a last minute invite and I'm like, I got to watch this one.
Oh, that's nice. Good to have you. All right, so more people joined, so I'll give the quick agenda and then I'll give it to Rick and Rich. So this time we're going to do things a little bit differently. So we'll start with the presentation for 45 minutes, followed by some Q&A, and then we'll do the Sitecore stand-up right afterwards. So without further ado, Rick and Rich, it's all yours.
Thank you. I'm just giggling at all the VR stuff here. Rich, I'll let you get the screen share going.
Oh yeah, I should probably do that. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So,
PowerPoint better this time.
how many of you saw this at SugCon? Dennis, I know that. All right. So this is largely that presentation, but I think Rich and I were going to be a little more free flowing with this one. Just bits and pieces that we may have picked up and whatnot. But we're going to just kind of talk about all things JAMStack and true headless with Experience Edge and Content Hub and BoxEver. So thanks Sitecore and the Six for hosting and inviting us to speak.
Please, while the presentation's going on, no drawing or disrupting. I'm assuming that's not actually Rich.
It's Rich's son, I think.
Yeah.
That's all showing up right on the camera.
Just tell him to pack it in. Isaac, knock it off.
Can he erase it? I don't think I can.
Can he? I don't know.
So while that's happening, I'll just
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
The VR's all fun.
So I think I know most of you. My name is Rickbauer. I am a strategy MVP. 5 years, and excited to hear that we might actually be getting our little loose site things a little earlier this year. So those are coming to us, the fellow MVPs. And besides that, Content Hub certified, and as most people are now in the world, BoxEver certified, it seems. Judging by LinkedIn, and I'm excited to be presenting once again with Mr. Richard Seal.
Hey, and I'm Richard Seal, 6-time technology MVP. I've been doing Sitecore for a while, but yeah, we recently got a lot more into Content Hub and enjoying BoxEver and Experience Edge and all that fun stuff. Oh, and I click next.
You're the guy. All right. Sorry. Yeah, so this is what we started doing. We were thinking about, working with the technologies, that the acquisitions that started happening, and Sitecore's leaning towards, the whole SaaS/CaaS. And if you saw, I forgot his name, the product, if you saw the recent go-to-market plan webinar and things like that, there's going to be information, I'm not sure all the stuff I can say here, but there's basically going to be, some more broader thinking coming out about the different approaches of Sitecore coming to the forefront as far as that. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's unknown, but there's your traditional Sitecore XP, and then there's working outside of that world and working in more of the headless approach. So with all of those pieces, let's try and put them together. Let's see what makes them tick. Let's see what makes it work, and really, I'll just kind of add this in, Rich. But I mean, basically, we did this whole thing, what you're about to see, in about 20 days. So what we kind of built up here from, we basically built a website, a music store website that we'll show you in a little bit, and the main reason is, we're putting all together, but I guess I would say the question is, why? Why did we do that?
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun doing it. I think initially it was we want to try play with all of the different technology, but it was definitely interesting as to how quick we got it out the door. And as for the why, I was just saying, prove out the technology. We wanted to see what worked, what didn't work. Still finding out what doesn't work, and just working out different ways around that, but also getting stuck into what does headless mean? How is it different from a Sitecore implementation that we're used to? So, we're doing a lot of SXA at Proficient, and we need to know how does that differ from more like a true headless solution. You know, we're now not completely integrated. We're used to XP, right? There's got the XConnect, it's got XDB, everything's all one system. Now we're doing Boxever, we're looking at Experience Edge, we're looking at Content Hub and JAMStack, and then pulling all of those different parts under that umbrella. So it's very different from maybe what we used to from a traditional Sitecore development.
Yeah, and I think there is a kind of a hard reality around this when talking with customers or potential customers, or if you are a customer, to think about this and be aware of it. But you know, with traditional XP and that kind of cohesive solution that Sitecore has always talked about, you know, now we're kind of taking a different, a right or left turn, maybe a U-turn, and maybe you're gonna do donuts in the parking lot for a little bit. But like, what are we looking at here from a, you know, basically, as we kind of titled this thing, like, you know, a new way to work, and it's a different approach completely. And it's not just going to be from a development standpoint, but it's going to be from a team standpoint. And that's not to say that the teams can't largely exist organizationally where they are, but they might work in different applications. And again, I think we're all on this ride to see the evolution of where this is going, you know, as you know, the initial states of, like, you can see that Style Labs became Content Hub and Boxever became Sitecore CDP. So all of these things are going to slowly start to change in name. And how are they all going to start to pull together? How do they become modules back in one united launchpad? What is that, you know? But in the meantime, there's potentially the place where different teams are going to be working in completely different applications. Content curators working in DAM, content authors working in CMP, product owners, product teams working in the product module of Content Hub, content marketers working in Boxever, and then front-end developers working, you know, to provide that component architecture and that look and feel, and then back-end architects and developers working on API configurations and kind of the deeper application tools. So, you know, that's kind of like the overview of this, but I'd still say it's an evolution, and it's gonna be an interesting piece to see what the different kind of advantages and disadvantages to each and all are. So it's definitely an interesting time to be in this in the Sitecore space, just because it's definitely a little bit of a moving target. And I don't know if I mean that in a positive way. It's kind of exciting, but it's just, it is, and they know it, you know, like I say, they're working on coming up with like the, if this, then that approach to the different tools that you have. And it could be very dependent. So.
Sure. Yeah. And then the big key is, there we go. Speed is, something that everybody's looking for right now, right? Google have really put an emphasis on speed. Everyone's talking about lighthouse scores and can you get the high lighthouse scores? You know, we did that. We looked at how can we do that with our music store, our fictional website. Can we plug all this in together and get those lighthouse scores that everybody wants to see? And yeah, you know, we'll address the elephant in the room. Sitecore XP is pretty heavy. It relies on a lot of resources. It takes a lot of horsepower to make it fast. Can you get good lighthouse scores out of XP? Yeah, but you've got to really work at it. You've got to plan your content. You know, you've got to really develop very well architected components, and then you've got to work around what Sitecore does. And it makes sense. It's a big, heavy server application. It does a lot of stuff, especially with the server-side personalization and the tracking and everything else like that. So there's a lot there for it to do. So it can be harder to make it fast. But then we move into more of the JAMStack world, and where that a lot of people are going there. Why? Because it's a lot easier to make that faster. You know, it doesn't instantly make your website fast. You do have to make sure you build a decent site as well, but the barrier to getting those good Lighthouse scores is a lot lower. If we just switch over to our site here, so I ran these just before we started, and we can run another set again just to prove the point. But you know, when we're looking at performance scores like this, our ACO score got marked down because we added a robots text to stop it being Googled, which makes sense. But you know, these scores are hard to come by in a big server application. But when we're talking about static site generation and something stuff like NextJS, JAMStack, these scores are a lot easier to come by. And when you build your site right, it works. So we'll just run another quick one there, and then we'll go back to our slides here. Let it run away. This is where last time it gave me a terrible score, because sometimes our shared instance on Content Hub is a little slow to download the images. And it did it again. Because when I leave it, every now and again, Content Hub becomes a little slow on downloading the images, but that's okay. And
to be fair, that is the shared sandbox that if you have a sandbox, it's shared.
But you usually get once Content Hub's woken up with that CDN, you get some pretty decent scores going into it.
Yeah, and so speaking of Content Hub, it's, you know, and again, this is going back to my team piece. You're going to hear a common theme from me, but you know, the days of Sitecore Content Editor and Sitecore Experience Editor and even SXA, you know, these are terms that don't really apply in this paradigm. This is Content Hub DAM, CMP, PCM, you know, MRM for that matter. And, you know, so we could be managing our content and basically uploading assets and setting all of our renditions properly to use multi-channel. And again, website, you know, this JAMStack NextJS website is a channel that would all be, you know, authored off of Content Hub. So, you know, again, like you know, even SXA, that came along and we had the ability to change different styles and grid configurations and things like that. We kind of pulled back from that a little bit, but then on the other hand, now we can have front-end developer, you know, the nimble nature of front-end developers to be able to quickly modify components and content and things like that. So it does, I would say it requires some more thinking up front, especially from a discovery phase and planning phase, and really, you know, more than ever. I don't know how many of you run into this on a regular basis, but really getting creative and UX and everyone in the room to talk through this is going to be important. Not to say that things can't change along the way, but really thinking out, you know, what are the base pieces you need? Because even when we start to get to box server, you'll see that you can basically create kind of web parts, if you will, that can then be to drive personalization. So all of that stuff, the more that can be pre-thought out, the better. But then again, the nimble nature of working on, you know, SaaS with front-end developers modifying the presentation, so then content authors can quickly work in Content Hub. And the Content Hub piece, I will tell you, after being on several Content Hub projects and working on this, once you get used to it, it's fast. I mean, like, it's you know, you're just working with text and images, and it's you know, even on a shared sandbox, it's fast.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a change in development mindset too, right? Just that Rick's mentioned it, that there's a lot more emphasis on the front end, but I think also a lot more emphasis on front end engineering versus what you might consider more of a classic front end in a Sitecore site, where the front end's fairly light on the JavaScript side, and there's more markup, CSS, styles and things like that. But you know, we get into the JAMStack with that, we're now thinking more about how we're using frameworks like React and Vue.js, and the engineering part gets into that. But you know, after building server-side .NET stuff for many years in my career, and moving over to using some of these frameworks, it can be a lot faster to develop these. It's definitely been fun to develop them. So it's a bit of a different mindset as you look at it from a development point of view.
So before we get into the fun code part, I want to walk through kind of some of the process of building out content in Content Hub, and just to demonstrate the kind of the way the modules work together and the speed at which you can do it. Now, I will caveat and say it's 4 slides of video loop. So if the loop starts over, I'm going to keep talking as the loop starts over. But I want to add that in some cases the loop is sped up. That's just in the interest of sticking to time and not talking all night. But it's not sped up by that much. It's really not. It's just sped up a little bit, and the whole process that you're going to see here is in order as I did it in the course of a little bit, I'll call it 30 minutes or so. So I just kind of condensed that down, maybe even less, maybe it was 20 minutes. But so we'll just let's just jump to the next slide and the loops will start here. But this is, first of all, the basics. And I just wanted to get some assets in here. So I wanted to add in an amplifier section to our store, to our music store. So I basically uploaded assets, and I can quickly check my background processes, and I'll see it pending. I can do a little refresh and watch that happen in process. But you can, first of all, it's easy drag and drop. You can also select from your local devices, and then there's also a nice handy way of adding via links. So that's a cool thing where you can basically kind of just like put in a bunch of like HTML links to your assets. So if you have content in, like, say a box drive or something like that, you can do that. So or previous repository. So that's kind of step one, is just getting those assets in. I don't know if that froze, Richard, did you? So okay, we're good right now. So here I'm gonna go into the products, and I realized I didn't have a category called amplifiers, and I'm able to add that right from within the product family. And I'm able to add the slug that ties to the website and do all the metadata tagging around it. So I'm able to get all of that done. And then I can go further than that and basically, just make sure that I have that available, and now go into the actual assets that I want to tie this to, and go into a mass edit table and apply that taxonomy. In this case, I had the product family. And children like amplifiers, so let's add that product family of children. No, so we added the product family of amplifiers, and then I can direct publish it. You can obviously run that through a view stage of create, review, and then publish, but I did a direct publish. But anyway, my point here, and I'm going to repeat this, is just this amplifier product family didn't exist. It's a taxonomy, and I was able to build it before we lost everything, Rich.
Oh yeah, it's all gone black.
You jumped ahead like a couple slides.
Which one were we on?
We were on slide 2 of the loops.
This one.
So I'll close out on this one. But again, the point here is your admins can build out taxonomy ahead of time, but me as just a content marketer, I could actually, in this case, I really like the product family module, because in this case I could add an entire family, which is basically building out the taxonomy on the fly, and it was just nice to have this here. So okay, you can go to the next slide. So, and this is just really to show there's my product family real quick, and then I can you can go into this product family, and I can further drill in, and now you'll see that because I assigned that in the mass edit table, that all my products are already automatically placed into the appropriate product family. I can set a cover image, and I'll point out that the cover image not only makes it look nice and pretty in Content Hub, but that is available from the website as basically something to tie into. And Rich, if you want to kind of elaborate on that, go ahead.
Yeah, and that was nice as well, that when you pull out the assets from experience as using the GraphQL queries, you could pull out that they have a master asset, which is the cover image. So that's helpful. Otherwise, they're basically just a big bunch of assets linked to that product. So it's not always easy you'd have to use taxonomy or something to highlight what that is. So yeah, it's just a handy little tip to be able to show a little icon or cover image on your website when you're building it.
Yep. Okay, so that was assets, and then now I just want to show kind of pulling it all together and creating an individual product. So I created the product group and got the assets in, but here I'm just going to copy paste in from a little copy deck and do my tagging, apply my amplifier category, add in a slogan, and this is all just information that we're pulling from content, applying the slug for the product page itself. So again, it's not the product family I'm creating the actual individual. I'm creating a product category or product for this Mesa Boogie app. Again, I've got a label. I can add more content. I can go in and further fill out the long description and get this information in, copy paste from a copy deck and get that in play. You can do so much or more around product and so on. But now, because I already uploaded the DAM, I can just go in and say add, and I can add in that image. And this is going to basically set that as cover, and now that's applied as the main image. But that's the main piece. I can add more content, and this is digging into the CMP from the product tool. So I'm adding in a primary feature product type, and I'm basically saying that this is and I'll show you here, it is a product selling point. That's the content type that I've just defined ahead of time, but this is reaching into CMP, and I'm basically saying, okay, there it is. If you looked at CMP before, you've seen these content cards, and I can go in, and with my fields already defined, I can go in and add in my body, paste that in, copy the title, and throw that up in the title field, save that. And then I can add in a secondary image, and I'm going to choose maybe just a different, like a top view down of this amplifier, and add that to the content type. And that's my primary feature. Now I want a secondary feature. So I'm just going to repeat this just to illustrate. And this is all, again, nearly real time, but I'm going to add that secondary feature in. And once again, this is a product selling point, and say okay to that, and then save. And then I'm going to further go in and add that content, add that image. Backside of the amplifier. I can also, just like I did before, add content. So this is just a way of building out a product page. So if you think about it, a page is just made up of different content areas of text and potentially corresponding images, and this kind of keeps that all together. So there it is, and I can basically start to move this entire product through workflow. But then I realized, you know what, I need to go back because there's workflow on the actual content too. So remember, I'm in the product tool, but I'm working basically on a content item that's connected to CMP. So the content items have their own workflow. So I just approved the primary feature. Now I'm going to go through and approve the secondary feature. So again, content elements that are basically, you'll find these if you looked into CMP, they'd be sitting there, but I'm just working from one centralized product area. So it's super handy is my point on this. And then once I have those content pieces, now I'm going to submit this entire product and everything that goes with it for approval. Once I do this, in our case, because we have it set for 20 seconds, that goes live on the site because we basically have set up some information around that. So, Rich, if you wanted to elaborate or go on, that's pretty much the loop started over. But
no, that's good. All right, so we can move on to the technical bit, or the technical side of that. How do we take that content hub part now and move it into a site? So we've mentioned JAMStack a little bit, but we'll talk a little bit about it again. If you've not heard of JAMStack by now, you may be hiding under a rock because it's fairly popular. At its heart, if you look on the JAMStack website, you can see that it really aims to achieve better performance, higher security, cheaper, easier scaling, and a better development experience. And the way it does that, we've talked about it already today but it uses tools like React, Vue.js, but it combines those with static site generation tools, things like NextJS or Hugo or Nuxt. There's a whole bunch of different ways of building out a JAMStack site, but at its heart, a JAMStack site really, once you've generated that, it's a static HTML page, right? So it's very fast to serve. Now, traditionally, static HTML has been a pain to maintain because nobody wants to sit there editing markup for every single page on your website. You know, that's how it used to be 20 years ago. But with static site generators, you can hook up CMSs and get that site generated from your dynamic content. And that's really where Content Hub and Experience Edge come into this. So Content Hub, you can use that CMP part of Content Hub as a headless CMS. And Experience Edge then provides you with a way of getting that data out of Content Hub. So it provides a GraphQL endpoint. You can go and query all of those entities in Content Hub and then pull them out to whatever you're consuming, you know, whether that's going to be your SSG website. You can pull it down to an iOS app or an Android app or anything like that. Wherever you want to consume it, you know, you can use that GraphQL endpoint to pull that out. In our case, we're looking at a JAMStack site, right? So we're going to use that in our code to pull out the content we need as we're generating the site. And we can look at this. This is the diagram that Experience Edge has in its documentation here. And you can see kind of how it works, right? So Content Hub sits at the bottom. You have its delivery platform, which is Experience Edge. You can sit that behind some CDNs to help with speed. You've got your static site generation tool, and ultimately that's all publishing out to your dynamically driven but static website, you know, and then you can plug that back into CDNs as well. You can make use of big edge cache networks and serve that website out to your users at a ridiculously fast speed, something that you'd really struggle with doing a more traditional .NET, like an ASP.NET MVC based website. Because of this, it really cuts down on the resources that you're using. You'll see, I mean, our site, we're using Content Hub, so you'd have your Content Hub subscription. Experience Edge would be part of that subscription as an add-on. But then as far as the website delivery mechanism, in our case, we're using Vercel, but there's a number of different options out there. You could even use Azure Static websites as well. And they're much cheaper because they're doing a lot less work. They don't need as much processing power. So your path to building your website becomes much less of an obstacle. So let's look now at how we built this. So I'll flip over to my other desktop and we'll load up the code here. So this is the code. Let me know if you can see it okay. Oh, yes, apparently it's asking me if I trust the authors here. So this is a fairly standard static website or with a Next.js template. Okay, if you've used Next.js at all, or if you had a look into it, it's got a generator. Is this visible in the dark mode, by the way? I just wanted to ask. Or do you
Text
want me
is
to switch?
very blurry.
You might want to zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, let me zoom in a little bit.
Thank you.
A little bit more.
A little bit more. Okay. That's what 4K screens do for you.
Yeah, that's
All
much
right,
better.
is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So, if you've used Next.js at all, or if you've had a look at it, and a lot of these tools have generators that scaffold out your site. You know, maybe you've seen how JSS does that too. I want a big shout out to Conabos as well. The team on there did a nice job. If you have a look at their GitHub, they've got a starter kit that you can use to build this out. I didn't use that starter kit directly. That's using TypeScript, and I wanted to try it out just in pure JS, just because I wanted to punish myself that way. You know, that we took some inspiration from how that was laid out. One of my big takeaways about this is don't get sucked into the trap of, oh, it's just JavaScript, I can put things wherever I want. Structure your code base neatly, because it's very easy to start getting lost, especially if you're doing straight JavaScript and not something like TypeScript. TypeScript makes it easier because you've got all of the nice tooling that Visual Studio Code gives you, some stuff that you're more used to in Visual Studio, like jumping around, looking at the implementation of things, and auto including things. So it's very nice. But what we have here in a Next.js site is you have your standard configuration files, your page items, your pages will live under the pages folder. It's pretty straightforward. The assets here, I just have some static assets living under here that get included into the pages folder. I used a open source Material UI theme, so that gave me some nice pre-built components, and we added a couple more in to help us out. And then API is where we put all of our GraphQL things that connect into not Box Ever, into Content Hub. So one of the nice things you get with Experience Edge is you get a preview key, and you have a public or delivery key and URLs. So you can swap your site in and out of preview mode and publish mode, and doing it that way will allow you to have a publishing workflow in your content from Content Hub, so you don't lose a workflow there, which is nice. The GraphQL queries are, if you've not seen GraphQL yet, I'm not going to go into exactly how the structure of GraphQL works, but they're very basic, very simple as to how, not basic, you can get quite complicated, but they're simple as to how they work. You know, you set a query, you tell it what the entity is that you want to pull from. You can do optional clauses here, so you can have a where clause. You could do pagination in here, tell it to only bring me the first set of rows. You can tell it to skip. There's a lot of options in here, and then ultimately you tell it what fields you want coming back from that. So the way this is set up is we have our query function that goes and gets the data, that pulls it back, and then we have a parser, which that parser will then pull it back and populate a model that is easy to read. So you'll have noticed here this funny name. When you create custom content types in Content Hub, some of them will get this unique name so that it can identify it uniquely against other fields that might have the same name. You can find that with there's a playground IDE for GraphQL for Experience Edge, and that shows you the schema of your Content Hub instance. So that's how you work out what these names are. But obviously you don't want to be typing F5 E51 all the way through your code base. So kind of like you would do in translating a domain model into a view model if you're going back into the MVC Sitecore world. So this is effectively our view model, and now we can use these in our pages. One of the big changes for me to get my head around was the fact that unlike a more traditional like React application, where you're pulling the content in from the server when the page loads, or in MVC where we're getting it on the server on the request and then pushing it back out to the page. Well, this is all done now at build time. So Next.js has a couple of special functions that you can create. So we have a get static props here. So this is React based, so props are the data that go into your React object, your React function, that hold all of the data that get passed into it. So get static props with the Next.js setup, that is run at build time, and it populates a bunch of data, and it uses that to render out the React component that you've built as your page into a static HTML. So in this case, we're getting some page content. We're actually getting the home page here. And rather than go with a dynamic route here, we've just gone a static route, pulled in the page content, pulled in some product families, and added that into the props. If we scroll up here, you can see this is just now a pretty standard React hook. We've got some classes in here to do the styling. We've got some components in. NextJS gives you this nice head component, which allows you to set stuff in the head section of the markup on a per page basis. So we can set browser title and meta tags, which is really handy. And then these are just React components used to build up the page, and we're just using the content that's in the props to build those up. It's fairly simple. When we went onto the product area, though, we needed to use dynamic routing. So there's a couple of different ways that NextJS does this. This is just the way we used with the ellipsis and the parameter here. We called it slug. This gives you like a catch-all wildcard. You do it without the ellipsis, which is a bit more limiting. Then there's a few different ways of doing that. But how does that translate into your statically generated pages? Well, again, NextJS gives you another function, and this time it's called get static paths. So get static paths, you have to get all of the paths that are available or that you want to be available for this particular wildcard, this particular path. So in our case, this is going to be our product. So we're going to get in all of our products. So this get page list here calls this get page list for our query for our products here. You can see this is pulling out all of the products. We've limited it to only our web store. So if you run a couple of different web stores on your site, you can filter it that way around. That's just the way we did it. There's multiple ways of doing it. But go back to here, and this returns us all of the different paths that are available to this store. Now, NextJS is going to call the get static props, same function we've already looked at, but for every one of those paths, it's going to call this get static props and generate a page per path. And this time we're going and getting the product data itself, all the full product data, and putting that into our React component. Initially, when you first look at it, it sounds like that's a little complex, but it's actually very simple. Once you get your head around it, it makes a whole lot of sense when you remember that everything's happening in build time. And the key is that this now builds this site into a static application. If we look here, we're using Vercel to deploy. Vercel hooks up to your GitHub repository very easily. You do everything in the Vercel control panel. It took about a minute to get this hooked up. It was very, very simple. And then every time you deploy your code to your main branch or whatever branch you've specified here, it will automatically build your site, build your code, and then statically generate all of those pages. So you want to change to that, make the change, push your code up, and generate your site. And if we view the build logs, this site's got about 30 pages on there, and it runs in four and a half minutes. So it's pretty fast. It's not too bad. However, there's only got 30 pages on there. So if you want to have a site with 5,000 pages on there and you extrapolate that, that's going to take a long time. How do we do that when it's just a content change? Well, the nice thing that we have with this is ISR, incremental static regeneration. So if I bring back up here, you may have noticed that I have a revalidate option here and then a fallback option. So well, this is telling me to revalidate the page. I've got it set to every 20 seconds. That's probably a bit quick, but every 20 seconds, it's going to revalidate the page. It's going to see if there's any content that's changed in Content Hub. If it has, it's going to regenerate this page for me. And the fallback blocking just says that if it's changed, it'll make the first user that hits that wait until the new page is regenerated. And we'll prove that. So Rick created this 2 Richards amplifiers here. So we have we'll go to our product family. we got the product here. If we go back to the music store, just refresh the page here. We don't have that as a category. We only have the drums, keyboards, and guitars. And that is because right now, the Two Riches amplifiers is not in the store. So what we'll do is we'll go and add it into the store. I shall save that. And that's going to go away and publish. And we'll come back to it in a second. But that's now publishing. You can go to your Vercel app, and what you'll start seeing here is that if you look at your real-time logs, it'll notice something's changed and go and regenerate that page. So you can see here that we've got a get is happening. And now we can see it looked like it got the amps. Yes, I have to refresh it a couple of times. And now you can see our amps is in there, right? So we haven't had to do a full build. We've edited the content in Content Hub, and amps has come back up. And just to prove it, we can go in and see the product page. So we have static pages. We have content that is able to be published. How do we personalize? Rick?
We don't. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer. Boxever.
Oh. Did I miss a slide? Oh, let's go back to Boxever. Ha! I'll log back in again.
So, if any of you have gone through the Boxever training, you know, it's nice to kind of just play with it. There's some learning ahead, but I mean, there's a lot of power here, and I'll tell you that the first things I like immediately from a personalization standpoint is, besides your basic component personalization, like changing content in a promo or changing content in a banner, Boxever already has some modules like, you know, on scroll distance or on time on page, and the little corner flyouts or banners, or, you know, just different approaches to things. But what we're going to do here is just kind of walk through kind of the bottom up here. And I say bottom up starting with library. We're not going to worry about dashboards or connections at the moment. But, you know, there's a lot that you can do as a content author, but there is still a development process. And I think a lot of this starts with the templates and having your developers look at building out templates. And the web templates, and then the offer templates here. So offer template is really kind of that, well, it's that way to be able to properly build an offer. And if you want to click into that, go ahead, Rich. So, you know, this is where we can basically say, here's our attributes, here's what we're, you know, what the context is, and apply that. And then that becomes available in this decisioning model to then build out the proper offers. Like what is the offer for different products? You know, is there a 20% off, 30% off? What is, and what are the reasons behind that? And so this canvas, which is really cool, this is where you can start to tie your offers, and that the offers are, you know, tied to this decision table, and you can edit these out and basically further drive information. But you can tie in all sorts of information, including AI, external systems, and that whole input data piece, which is right now at the bottom says guest. That is what the CDP is. That's the, you know, that the customer data platform. So it's basically a list of different customers, and that can work in real time. It can be a submitted list. It can be tied to other systems, etc. But I mean, that you start to pull these different flows and tables together, you can really create some complex decisions around automating what content shows. And you can test it, you can put it into production, you can archive it, you can pull back from archives. Anyway, so you're working your way up. Ultimately, at the very top, that's that customer data, you know, piece, like I said, where you'll see, like, because Rich and I both filled out forms that were in here. Again, if there was a list that you uploaded, that would be in here, and then you can further define segments. And even this is really cool, like just the quick at a glance information from devices and locations and timelines and time of day. You really can quickly at a glance see some good information about your users. And then, like I say, you can apply those segments and build this out further. And I think the segments piece, Rich, was where we kind of got into departing from the basics into moving into advanced. I'm just trying to make sure I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah, so segments work very much like you expect a segment to do. Apart from the content in the segment is aggregated at a much slower pace than you might initially realize. So the segments get updated every 24 hours, right? So if your users go into a particular segment, all of their data is tracked via the guests section here, and they might meet the qualifications to go into a guitar fan segment, right? But they won't go into that until the next day. So you can go ahead and do real-time tracking and real-time segmenting. You have to make sure that your components there's some extra JavaScript you have to do. The documentation is there on the BoxEver site as to how to do that, but it does require a little bit of extra code to make sure that you're doing the real-time segmenting as versus the standard where it would just apply the next day.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate that, if you're a marketer, if you're fine with next day taking hold, that's one thing. If you want real-time personalization, you're going to need that to be coded.
Yeah.
So then all of these come to...
Sorry, I have one question. Hi, it's Faria.
Hello.
Hey, you said like for personalization, you need to code it in there. So these are like even Sitecore out of the box kind of them, or this is just for JAMStack?
Sorry, what? Ask the question again.
So for personalization, this is personalization like we're setting within the platform. Like is it out of the just out of the box?
So we're gonna get we'll get there. We're just about to come on to how the personalization fits into JAMStack.
All of this. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So yeah, so all of that kind of like, from the templates into the decisioning model and the pulling in the customer data, all of that starts to bear fruit in both the experiments and the experiences. And if you think about it from a Sitecore XP standpoint, experiments is content testing, experiences is personalization. So we built out 3 experiences. We have this guitar, drums, and keyboard experience. And again, here's where you start to be able to figure out how you're going to apply this. And again, BoxEver itself has some tools like the flyouts and things like that, but this is also where you could potentially be building into that component level. And here you can see like we did a corner pop-up, and the marketer can set like the offer, you can set the colors, and you can do quite a bit. But there can come a point here, and you see this advanced tab where we're back to code. So this is just something where templating or creating these ahead of time can be done, but you can see there's a lot of, from HTML to styling to JavaScript to APIs.
Yeah, and this is pretty neat that you can do this when we're talking about the personalization. So they do have these things. These are built in. Obviously, they look a certain way. If you want it to look a different way, you're going to have to modify these and have some code done to that. But that's only natural. So remember this kind of personalization, unlike a Sitecore personalization in XP where you might have 2 components and you're swapping the different components out, right? So this works more like other systems. I know Salesforce have something similar, and there's a whole bunch of external systems. But rather than the personalization swapping components out on your platform, right, it's doing it on the client side. So now the component that it's swapping out, or in this case, the component that it's injecting, is built in BoxEver. So your data is coming in here, right? Your CSS is coming in here. Your JavaScript's coming in here. So you can set up a whole bunch of templates, build those components in as templates, but then you can also customize those components per personalization. And the nice thing is once you've added this component to a personalization, it effectively takes a copy of it and silos it into your personalization. So anything that I change here, it will only be for this personalization rule. It won't affect the original template. So that means I can take what's there, customize it, do what I want without worrying about affecting anybody else's personalization rules. So that's pretty handy. We modified these a little bit to just match the styles on our site a bit more,
and to eke out some Lighthouse.
Yes, a couple of little Lighthouse updates.
It goes back to what I was talking about, kind of thinking through ahead of time on what you might want to personalize on. Is it going to be a hero? Are you going to do like pop outs and things like that? Because those templates do matter, but once they're created, it's there for the content author to work with, and even still have some capability to modify some basic colors and things like that. But this whole stack that you're seeing here, so first of all, there's just the component or the way you're personalizing on the top, but then you can specify what page that's going to be targeted on. So we can control that, hey, this is only going to happen on the home page, this little flyout piece, or maybe it's a specific hero, personalization. We can apply it only to a specific page. It's trying to move that journey. Then you can tie in from CDP that audience, and then the decisioning piece, which we didn't worry about this just for the sake of our setup here, but the decisioning piece, we showed you that tree before. That's where you can really get some advanced logic that's driving very complex, including AI intelligence and multiple system intelligence. You think about Boxever, it's came from like the travel, the airline space. I mean, you think about buying a flight and how much they're aware of those kind of pieces of what your what status you are, where you've traveled, all those pieces that can all be pulled into that one place. And then you can still have goals. And the Boxever goals, I'm sure this is extensible, but the Boxever goals definitely seem to be dollar based. At least the out of the box pieces seem to be tied to, how much is this, how much in dollar value is this making for you? But I'm sure that is just, the kind of the starter pieces of this. But you put all of these pieces together and you're really starting to change and having some intelligent content around personalization.
Yeah. And the cool thing here is that, like, we're personalizing it with one component, but you can add variants and you can do testing here, right? So that's where your goals come in. You can add multiple different variants of that component, split the traffic between each one, and now you've got a multivariate test going into that. So let's look at how this works, right? We've got these 3 experiences. So let's go ahead and run those experiences because they were paused for our earlier demo. And so what we have, as if we go back to our code base here, we created a very simple Boxever component, and all of this is all on the Boxever documentation. It's very easy to do, but ultimately it works very much like Google Tag Manager, right? So you inject a piece of JavaScript into the body of your website. In Boxever's case, it goes right at the bottom. You have your client key, you have your target endpoint that specifies whether you're in Europe or for some reason Asia Pacific. I'm sure there'll be other ones there. You can set a cookie domain. This one is super important, the Webflow target. So with these ones just set, then you get your tracking in there. It'll start tracking your guests and doing everything else. It won't do your web experiences unless you have a Webflow target set as well. Now, Webflow target is what then starts injecting code back into your website and enabling those web experiences, multivariate test, personalization, things to happen. But otherwise, very simple. We just included that on the site. And let's go and prove this. So if we'll just open incognito window and go to the site. And what you'll see here is, I'll just open the console so you can see some of the logs happening. But as we go around the site, you can see that we're sending Boxever view events here. And that is login which pages we've gone to see. Okay, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify who I am. Okay, So we have this form set up so that it will identify this session with this email. Okay, and I've already been around the site so that this user is already identified with a segment. Okay, so we can see that the identify user has been sent. So now if we go back home and I'll click around a little bit, and I know I've got to wait 5 seconds. So I'll wait just a little bit on here, and it should pop up. We have to scroll. Let me go to an actual page, product page. Can't remember where we had it set. There we go. So now this has popped up. I was obviously not waiting long enough on the other page. This is the flyout pop-up. It's seen that I'm in the drum segment, so it's given me the save 20% on drum accessories. And you know, we could associate a goal with the email thing being filled in and things like that. But this pop-up came straight from Boxever, and based on the personalization and on the segment that I was in. And that it's as simple as that, really. When we go back to the site, you can see it's a pretty snappy site as you go through. I would recommend that you look at getting CDNs in front of the Content Hub images, because the public links can be a little slow. That may be just because we're on the sandbox, but the pages load pretty fast. And with the Lighthouse scores, overall, it's a great experience pulling in from Content Hub and using that JAMStack solution for the site.
And does that have the recent, since you turned personalization on for Lighthouse scores?
Yeah, let's go back to the incognito one, the one that is running the personalization. So we'll generate a new one here. Oh, I've never done it on this page. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with that performance score.
Yeah.
It's not bad. So sometimes it would be good if some of the Boxever files that came in had TTLs on the response headers, but it doesn't seem like they have that at the minute.
And I think our SEO is the robot piece, right?
Yeah, the SEO is, yeah, I haven't looked at, I didn't optimize all the pages. I optimized the home page for the accessibility and the best practices. So this is just naturally like that from a React application that's got some decently written components in there. So the toolkit that we used to build those was already pretty well built. So that was nice. But yeah, I'm quite happy with those scores.
Cool. And we can go to questions, but here's us on all the things. I'm not gonna, I mean, you can read it, but on Twitter and Slack and Stack Exchange. And both Rich and I are at Proficient, and thanks to them for just kind of supporting us while we do these kind of things too. So yeah, so the other couple thank yous around this, if you can go to the last slide there, Rich, before we go into questions, is we had 2 people from Boxever basically kind of when we got there, first of all, help with getting the sandbox. But Cormac, if you were on a call with Cormac, you've seen him talk before from Boxever, and Lorna, also both basically technically Sitecore now, just kind of helped us out a little bit. So a big thanks to them. And a little extra thanks to where we got all of our content, which is why we're blocking robots, because we got all of that content from sweetwater.com. A little plug, if you're looking for some musical instruments, go to sweetwater.com. So I'll open it up for questions.
What's in your mind, what's the biggest departure from kind of the Sitecore, the thing that we're used to in XP? Engagement value based sort of scoring of things and testing, and then data source sort of based personalization of items. What's the biggest departure for you from that sort of thinking to this? And then secondly, in that, in Content Hub, we have this, and I struggled with it during my prep for SugCon as well. We have this idea of the impact scores on items, and where does that fit into this whole kind of, or where could it fit in the future into this whole kind of picture with a Content Hub based and Boxever JAMStack approach?
I share that with you, Dennis.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I mean, I think, like I said before, where different teams are going to work in different places. I think the impact score, like I would imagine that content authors are going to set up the impact scores to be able to look at just kind of effectiveness of content across channels, because that's what they're going to be looking at. Marketers that are working in Boxever are going to be looking at their goals and those metrics based on personalization and testing. I ultimately think that they need to start to surface up in one place, and that's the part where I kind of live in the I don't know, where is that going? Because I do feel like all of these different disparate apps need to come back together, and I think, Dennis, you've said it before, like I forgot the name of the duck, but like that was
Frankenduck.
That was always the kind of the thing that Sitecore would argue against, and now we're got the Frankenduck. So how do we pull that back together to not make it feel so different, apart from each other? So yeah, different platforms. I think the analytics are already, I don't know. I think they're more tunable already. It's just kind of figuring out how to properly configure that and set that up. So yeah, it's definitely kind of takes some learning. But I would, for a future state, I would like to see it all kind of work cohesively. That's where, there's going to be a technical challenge to pull all of these back together to be meaningful data, which is, that's, we've seen that with XP where people add in things like, I always blank on the Power BI and other tools like that to aggregate their data. Is that still going to be a necessity, or is there a way that we can make a dashboard that actually is part of this whole suite?
Well, Rich, maybe like, how would you think perhaps of, would it be like via some of that API stuff in those personalization rules that we might be able to like pull content, different pieces of content, and inject that into Boxever, having Boxever kind of intermediate some of that from Content Hub? Could you conceive of a way to do that?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, anything that's coming from Boxever is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So if we can do it in JavaScript, we can send it over. And Experience Edge gives us those endpoints when we're using the public one. That is much faster than the preview, obviously. So yeah, if you wanted to personalize with some content being pulled directly from Content Hub, that wouldn't be a problem. You're just going to write your query in a different place. You're going to pull that JavaScript again. It's coming from Content Hub rather than in your main, not Content Hub, sorry. It's coming from Boxever, then coming from your main JAMStack application. So, it's a little awkwardness, maybe, like Rick said, having all of the different parts in different places. So it would be nice if we could have Boxever personalized with some code directly from the JAMStack application. But ultimately, Boxever was designed as a third-party tool that sits outside of the application and is agnostic of whatever it's personalizing. So I can see arguments to and against that, or for and against that. But yeah, I mean, you'd still be able to do it. You're just putting the code in a different place.
Cool, thank you.
Questions?
Any more questions, guys? Comments?
I have a question around Content Hub. As we start to see this approach, do you see Content Hub becoming where all of the content management is happening? I mean, when you think about doing a big application, I'm talking about the little bits of content, right? Not the big articles and, but the little pieces of content when you want to have absolutely every piece of text managed. Do you see a Content Hub being that ever, as a place to manage all those little bits?
I think that is, when this approach is somewhat the necessity. I'm not saying that I don't think we'd want to necessarily hard code certain, I mean, like a disclaimer or something like that, but I think that's where the product piece, like, there's several aspects to Content Hub that I think that make this doable, and that is Content Hub has in the CMP section of Content Hub, there's collections, so you can organize, different, you can group together different content types.
Mm-hmm.
Then taking advantage of the product section to really capture all those little tiny things like SKUs and product numbers and all those, and we just touched on a few things. You could build out an endless taxonomy for any content type or product type or anything like that. So it's certainly made to do that. Rich and I have talked about that a lot. Is this going to be the, is this really because it is a departure, like we went from form field editing in content editor in Sitecore, then we went to experience editor. So now we can edit visually. Now we're going to potentially Content Hub, where you're just working in ASCII text and placing images that just you have to assume are going to go to the right place on the page.
Right. And it kind of brings page orchestration back into the hands of the front end developers, and because I don't know, that seems to be the challenge right now, is holding on to that experience editor ability, and the page orchestration ability is where people seem to have a hard time letting go.
Yeah, and
you don't necessarily have to let go of page orchestration. It's just different, right? You're not orchestrating the page in a visual designer. I think Content Hub has some way to go for this yet. It in the CMP space, it's not as mature as some other headless CMSs. It's got potential to be there, but it needs to grow a bit more. But if you look at other headless CMSs that have been doing this a while, they have the page orchestration tooling in there for you to be able to say, I want these components on the page. It's different to experience experience editor.
Well, it's a little bit like how it used to be, right? Before, when we would have tree pickers, where we'd create our CTAs over here and then pick as many as we want and put them in and sort them in the order. It's almost, when you look at some of those systems, it's kind of like going back to that, whether it's Contentful or Content Stack or any of those.
Sure.
It goes back to that idea, which is interesting, because it seemed fine, and then Sitecore sold us all on, well, we really need to have this experience editor experience in order to do it the right way. And now it's kind of like, but we might have to go backwards a bit, unless you buy into the JSS capabilities of using the rendering engine and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's when you look at, you can have the experience editor stuff, right? You can do all the page orchestration in that, but there's trade-offs.
Yep.
To have that work, there's going to be a big trade-off in performance when it comes to composing the page on the server.
Yep.
Because it has to do all of that for you.
Not to mention,
even when you're talking about the JSS side of thing, using the layout service, it's still doing that, and there's performance issues, not issues, but there's considerations, right, that you have to think about when you're doing that. Now with NextJS, with JSS, maybe then we're starting to get more into being able to statically generate this stuff, and that gives us into a better space. But when you think of having something that's truly headless, to have your CMS completely agnostic of your delivery system, there's not really a good way of being able to visually compose your page at that point. Otherwise, as soon as your CMS and your delivery system work together like that, then they're not really headless. They're dependent on each other, right? So
Completely.
It depends on which way you want to go. If you're going to go truly headless, that is the trade-off.
That's
but you
why,
end up with a very fast site.
that's exactly, and I think that's why the kind of the multiple formulas are still coming. You know, like you can still do this with XP and and Experience Editor, but not only is the delivery compromised, but the authoring process, and that's it Experience Editor can be slow and painful with page reloads and everything. So a lot of times people that are used to Experience Editor and maybe no Content Editor still will go in and make quick changes in Content Editor. So I still wondering, and Liz, you said something like, we're kind of went forward to now we're going back. I wonder, and I truly mean this as a wondering thing, and I know this is kind of a general statement, but what I've run into is just, other than maybe campaign landing pages, not a lot of day-to-day use of Experience Editor in that fashion of reorganizing a page. Most content authors I see take the template as it is and change the content in it. So at that point, let's go with the speed,
Agreed. I mean, look, I think a lot of us who have developer roots, especially, are more than happy to go back this way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, commenting on this point, like this challenge of the true headless CMS that people are missing really the visual aspect of building pages is across all the new headless CMSs. Like talking to Contentful, Content Stack, even Content from Kentico, like all of them, a lot of the customers are trying to go to headless right now. They're asking that question, like, how do we actually build pages visually? Like we get the idea and the benefit of headless, the speed, and decoupling and all these, ease of use and microservices, but we're still missing as marketers the visual aspect of all that. And all the true headless CMSs are aware of that challenge, and I think they're racing to solve that issue in a way that they keep their true headless nature.
Yeah, I don't think it's a Content Hub Sitecore specific problem. As soon as you go headless, you're going to struggle to get that visual aspect in there.
Yeah, exactly. And JSS is the only, or one of the very few headless CMSs or tool that actually keeps the visual editing with the headless architecture.
Yeah, so JSS, and maybe a controversial statement, but JSS isn't necessarily really true headless, right? The only way you get the visual editing in JSS is by having the Sitecore SDK in there. The system has to know about Sitecore, and Sitecore has to know about how JSS works. It's a very specific thing. The nature of true headless is that effectively I could take the website we just wrote, change the GraphQL queries to use whatever the Contentful's API is, model my data in Contentful, and then the site works. I mean, I know it's not always that perfect in the thought in reality, but that's the thought process behind what a headless is. JSS is more like a hybrid approach. I think it's definitely in the middle there, but I wouldn't call JSS true headless just because it still has a fairly tight coupling to Sitecore. You can't build JSS on anything else.
No, for sure. Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, any more questions? No, going once, going twice. All right, cool. Rich and Rick, thank you so much. This was a great hands-on knowledge and demo. Thank you so much. We'll have the recording up on YouTube, guys, shortly. And then we can go to Sitecore stand-up. So as you guys know the format, just go around the table, talk about what's been happening in your Sitecore space and anything you want to share with everyone here. So who wants to go first? not everyone.
I'll go first, and then I'll just pick somebody after. Yeah, so I mean, obviously SUGCon, which just passed, that was an interesting journey, and I'll shout out these guys for a great presentation and what work that we've done there. So I look forward, I think in Stand Up, I'll be working a little bit more on some of this like personalization challenges and try to figure out, Rick, where that impact score really fits in and how we get some stuff back there. So I'll look forward to it's an open call to anybody who's looking to kind of collab on that. We'll get a Git repo going and try to put some stuff out for the people to consume. But that's what I'm working on. Has got me excited so far, and all of this Content Hub stuff. Content Hub's my favorite Sitecore product so far. So let's see how we can make it good. All right. I'll call on Sasha. Sasha's very reliably showing up for these things. So Sasha, you're next. If you're still there, brother, you're on mute. You're talking. Sasha's asleep. Santa, something's coming up from you, Santa. So why don't you tell us about that? Hopefully Santa's there.
Yep, I'm here.
There you go. Yeah, you're up.
Yeah, how's it going, everyone? Yeah, for me, I've been working with a few clients on some, little redesign projects, taking care of accessibility. Accessibility deadline is coming up. So yeah, that's it.
And the next Sitecore user group?
The next Sitecore user group is gonna be on the 27th of July. So yeah, looking for that. I'll be scheduling that very soon.
Yes, thank you, Sana. You can pick someone.
Sure. How about you, Mustafa?
Okay, sure. So I've been working with the team here at Conobos to help with the execution on our projects for Sitecore and other non-Sitecore headless projects. We've been working on expanding the team, bringing in some new team members to help execute and push the technical side. So it's been lots of fun growing with Conobos. And lately I've been presenting and talking about the future of Sitecore project management. Done a couple of Sitecore user groups. So I've been learning and talking about how Headless changes the project management of Sitecore projects and what project managers and project teams should be aware of. How can they effectively work together in this new Headless world? So it's been a very interesting journey for me to learn about Headless and link that back to the project management concepts and see how it changes for us as project managers. So yeah, that's been mainly my stand-up. And I will pick Jim. If you're still here, you're on mute.
Jimmy's gone.
Jim is gone.
Jimmy left the building.
We're losing people. Okay, Prasad. Oh, come on. Prasad, are you there? All right, Rick, go ahead.
Sure. I'm speaking at the Toronto SUG. Oh, wait. Did I say Toronto right?
That's right. That's right.
No, I mean, I'm in the Dennis camp. I'm all things Content Hub. I mean, not all, but a lot, and it's actually been fun. I mean, especially for somebody that's been in the Sitecore XP marketing space for a while to try to learn something new. You know, it's been fascinating. So that's fun, and now along comes BoxEver. So and so on and so on. So kind of keeping up with all the new kids in the Sitecore town. That's going to be the focus for me going forward. But just kind of working on live projects and learning.
Awesome.
I will pick Ben.
No, I'm just kidding. I was tempted to just not say anything for a while and see how long that went. So not too much interesting going on my end. Working on some projects that are hopefully going to launch soon. Been learning a bit about Docker and how containers work. And AKS and all those cool, fun things. Got to dig into the Azure portal a lot. Haven't focused too much on Content Hub just yet, but it is kind of an area that I want to explore a bit more. But I've been kind of focused on learning about infrastructure at the moment and what Sitecore can technically run on. I don't know why I used the word technically there. It made it sound much more uncertain than it really was, but
I don't know, Ben, I think Rich and I took away from that you want to do a Content Hub project. So, noted.
Yeah, I'm down.
Nice.
Got it.
Has anybody who was called on before returned? Sasha, Prasad? So
Don't think so.
On one hand, I like having the Sitecore stand-up after the presentation, but it doesn't look like we have everybody here when that happens.
Yeah. So maybe we do it at the beginning after all. Nabil, you want to do everyone, and
We have Nabil.
Nabil and Rich, and then we'll call it a wrap. What's up with you, man? Ben's throwing tomatoes at me.
All right. So recently I've been working with amazing people in the Sitecore community, with Jackie and the SWAT team on a Sitecore profiling strategies white paper, and it was published recently.
Forgot about that.
Put it on the chat.
Yeah.
You know, just check it out. You know, Rick, of course. Hey, you're part of that team. So.
Yeah, and I spaced it, so good one.
Yeah, it's really good and fun. So yeah, that's really valuable information captured from the whole community, you know, experience. So that's good. And recently, I've been really like digging a lot on this headless NextJS, React space, and reflecting all these strategies into Kaju, the product that we're working on to convert design mockups into JAMStack codes with AI. And now we're in final stages of automating the whole new build, like building the generated code and deploy it like pre-designed pipelines to the head, Vercel, or any other hosting. So very, very, very fun. Like, we're really enjoying automating all that process. So it'll be much easier for people to just sketch something and then see the code generated and deployed automatically. So this is what I'm been working on and excited about. And of course, using all that for clients' projects. We're doing a couple of headless projects. So yeah, that's about me.
Thank you, Nabil. And Rich, you muted yourself.
Oh, look at that. I pressed. That's stupid. I've been doing a lot of Content Hub stuff with Rick. That's been fun. Learning about all of the user roles and groups, and what we were doing today, Rick, some MRM stuff, figuring all of that out. So that's been good. I've got my other Sitecore projects, a lot of SXA stuff going on still. Nothing super interesting. Apart from presenting here, of course.
Nice take.
Sounds good. All right, guys. I think that's it. Then we can leave Dennis and Ben to play with their VR stuff, and we can go get some dinner.
All right, everyone.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick and Rich. It was great having you guys.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us, guys.
All right.
See ya.
Take care,
Later.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.